Hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to another live show. Probably a shorter live show than usual today, but we are going to discuss the latest Manchester United news. I'm going to give my thoughts on it, as well as a little bit of a conversation about Ten Hag's comments post Chelsea and other news going about. I think in today's show, we're going to dive into the report about John Murtough leaving United, potentially being sacked, the replacements. Laurie Whitwell has done a deep dive into INEOS' long-term strategy, which has got some fans very unhappy online. Reports that INEOS do have plans to back Ten Hag, and some fans aren't happy about that. They're saying they're other Glazers, they must sack Ten Hag if we want to succeed. And personally, I think that's a bit unfair. Whether INEOS decide to part ways with Ten Hag or whether INEOS decide to back Ten Hag, I can understand it either way. And I think personally myself, I'm just going to back what decision they make and judge them in the long term. I think it's really easy to be emotional right now as a Man United fan. I think it's really easy to be negative right now as a Manchester United fan because the Chelsea loss is horrible and there's so many problems and so many dramas at this club. But I think you've got to remember with INEOS, this is a long-term project. Just because INEOS don't sack Ten Hag or do sack Ten Hag isn't a reason to mouth off and hate INEOS and call them other Glazers. They're bringing in Omar Barada, they're bringing in Dan Ashworth, but there's some difficulties with that, more so on Newcastle side. They're bringing in Jason Wilcox, which is good. They're changing the recruitment, they're changing the environment, and that's not going to change overnight. That's this time next season. That's not just going to miraculously change. It's going to take time, and I think we can only seriously judge INEOS in 2-3 years to say, are they not other Glazers or not? We can only seriously judge them in 3 years. I think that Ratcliffe's involvement and Brailsford's involvement with the club would suggest they're more interested than the Glazers. The fact that they've limited dividends being taken out of the club would suggest they're not here for financial reasons because they can make money out of INEOS. Dramatically can take money out of INEOS. I think this whole overreaction to this Laurie Whitwell report by fans saying that INEOS is on fraud watch and INEOS is clearly other Glazers, they're keeping Ten Hag, they're morons. I mean, I understand the emotion, but I think we've got to detach from that emotion and just remember that INEOS are working on a long-term project. Murtough's probably going to go. Lots of people are going to come in. Obviously, recruitment, we can judge them a little bit based off what recruitment happens this summer, who's sold, who's brought. But I think INEOS is one of those where we can only really judge them in 2-3 years because it's going to take a couple 2 years for Dan Ashworth to really make his impact, 2 years to see the difference. You look at Arsenal and Arteta their first season, Edu coming in, you see the impact of that now. That's what you've got to remember. Spurs have changed a few things with Daniel Levy having less power, and we're starting to see the impact of it now, and Spurs' recruitment of Doggy Sarr really going up. It is a long-term process, and I think things are negative at the moment, and it's really easy to be negative. But I think there's things to be positive about, there's things to improve on. And I think it's, if INEOS keep or sack Ten Hag, I'm not going to turn on INEOS, whatever decision they make. I can understand it either way. It's about what they believe is best in the long term. Shank says Eric Ten Hag needs to show something. There's no structure, no playing style plan. I would like Eric Ten Hag to continue, but he has to blame himself for the situation. Look at Liverpool and their academy players. I think Eric Ten Hag should be doing better with the players available, 100%. And I think there's lots of things Eric Ten Hag's getting wrong, but I also do think that Eric Ten Hag is capable of succeeding once we can sort out recruitment and other problems at United, because we knew what he did in his first season. We knew what he did at Ajax. So if we dive into the news and information that has come out, it was said by Laurie Whitwell earlier today that football director John Murtough is set to leave Manchester United. Murtough's exit should be confirmed once hires on the structural side are formalised. So Murtough's probably basically been sacked, let's be honest, but he won't go until, I don't know, Jason Wilcox is sorted. Omar Barada is obviously replacing Richard Arnold. I think Jason Wilcox is replacing John Murtough, and Dan Ashworth will be coming in. We know that Manchester United are talking to Viana at Sporting, the club to Portugal, whatever you want to call it, Sporting. They're speaking to the guy at Sporting that's overseen transfers like Chocorez and some great deals at Sporting, of him coming in and overseeing a multi-club network, which would include Manchester United, Nice and Lausanne. We know that they spoke to Dougie Freeman and Julian Ward about recruitment. They obviously wanted Paul Mitchell for the recruitment role, but he wanted to be a director of football. We know that conversations are going on. I would say if I was Manchester United, maybe look at getting Paul Mitchell on a temporary. If Dan Ashworth isn't going to be here for the summer, because it's looking unlikely, is there any way we could approach maybe Paul Mitchell for the summer, because he's just an expert in recruitment, to really help us out? Because I think this summer window is going to be one of the most important summer windows we've had in a long time. I am going to talk about, obviously, Enzo Fernandez's awful comments towards Mason Mount, go on a bit of a rant about that. I am going to talk about other things as well, but I want to get into a report that has caused a few fans to be upset. Look, Eric Ten Hag's post-match comments are sometimes when Erik ten Hag says things post-match, I do think, has he watched the game? But I also think that Erik ten Hag is overly positive post-match because he knows if he slams the players will turn on them because they've got weak mentality. I think I could see it either way. But let's get into the actual news. So this has caused fans upset, and some of them are not saying, they've lost faith in INEOS because of this. And I think it's a bit of an overreaction because, one, no decision's been made. This isn't final. And two, if INEOS do want to back ten Hag, they've got every reason to. Every single manager's failed at United post Alex Ferguson. The environment needs to change before the manager. Even though it was bad, it's been bad. There's bigger problems than ten Hag. There's things that we need to do before we sack ten Hag if we want to be a successful team. And necessarily, if we do those things, we might not even need to sack ten Hag because we know what he's capable of. Anyway, Laurie Whitwell said this: INEOS would like to stick with Erik ten Hag, and he would also like to stay at Manchester United. There has been a good sense of collaboration and discussion between ten Hag, Brailsford, and Ratcliffe. Now, lots of reports are saying INEOS have already decided to part ways. Whitwell, who's a credible journalist, a very credible journalist, is saying that INEOS would like to stick with ten Hag. I don't think anyone actually knows what INEOS want to do. I think Laurie Whitwell is fed information by the club that knows that ten Hag's involved in discussions about the future of INEOS. So I'd assume that Laurie Whitwell has the belief that ten Hag is probably going to stay. But I think only INEOS deep down know if he's going to stay or go, because there's a lot of reports saying that this isn't true and that actually INEOS have already decided to get rid of ten Hag. But are they doing that because we've lost and you can jump on the bandwagon and get clicks? I think any real indication about ten Hag's future is quite unknown. But it was said that several figures at Man United do feel that ten Hag deserves a chance to operate in a new structure, populated by people who Sergeant Ratcliffe and Brailsford regard as the best in class. And there was a poll up about after the Chelsea match if we should sack ten Hag or not. 51% of people said keep ten Hag, 49% said sack ten Hag. So very, very mixed. And I'd assume that's probably the similar feeling of the decision makers at the club. But a lot of people are saying, look, why don't we actually get rid of the players, get rid of this, get rid of that, back the manager and see how he does and bring in the best in class, because every manager before ten Hag is failed. Look at Arteta. Arteta's second season was dreadful. Arsenal fans hounded him out. Look at Arteta now. Jurgen Klopp's first 2 seasons weren't great. Obviously, his second season was a lot better than ten Hag. Second season, he showed the progress. I think there's a debate either side. I think there's a debate to get rid of ten Hag because the 17 losses is a new record in a season. You look at how many shots we concede, how we're playing, how we're getting dominated, how ten Hag should be doing better. I think there's lots of reasons to sack ten Hag, but there's also lots of reasons to keep ten Hag because we know he's a good manager. We know what he's capable of, and it's causing a bit of a debate online. Personally, I would like to see ten Hag given till Christmas. I think if we go into next season after good recruitment, and ten Hag's not doing well, then potentially it's something that you need to sort of look about changing. Now, interestingly, it's been said, and one of the things that's been heavily reported, and I will get back into the news in just a second, but it's basically been said that ten Hag is willing to sort of do a head coach role rather than a managerial role. Erik ten Hag at United was doing a managerial role. He was looking at recruitment. He was doing this. He was doing that. INEOS want to strip a lot of control and power away from ten Hag, and they do the recruitment and tell ten Hag that they want him to coach and play this style of football, and they do the recruitment for it. If that's the case, and we keep ten Hag and things aren't going well by December, at least the players we'd assigned is to play a certain way of football, and then we'd bring in another head coach that could be deserving to play that way of football, rather than buying players for Erik ten Hag and then a new manager comes in because we have to sack Erik ten Hag and we spent a load in the summer because things aren't going well at Christmas and that new manager doesn't want those players. INEOS are almost going to plan to take the reins on signings and say, you know what, Erik ten Hag is going to be a head coach now. He's not going to be a manager. Everyone we sign is to play this way. So if ten Hag goes, the next manager can pick up the squad. A little bit like how De Zerbi could pick up Graham Potter's squad so easily, I think is the goal of INEOS as well. We haven't played well once this season. We've had a few good games. Crystal Palace in the Cup. Aston Villa second half when we went 2-0 down. I think the first game at Chelsea versus home was good. I think Wolves away, that first half was really, really good. We've had good games, but I don't think we've had consistently enough good games considering this season as well. The only manager I wouldn't mind is Nagelsmann. Don't want De Zerbi. For me, when we're linked to play, I like De Zerbi, but De Zerbi and Graham Potter, I think they need to go to another club before they go to United. United's too big of a jump. Brighton to United's too big of a jump. What structure will make gaps in the midfield disappear? What formation could you sign that will make that? What players could you sign that will make that formation work? It's difficult. Amadou Onana would be of help, and I actually want to bring you into this. So everyday MUFC reacted to the Laurie Whitwell article that spoke about INEOS sort of keeping Ten Hag, but Ten Hag having a lot less power and control and being a head coach, and Murtough going, and the focus is the new structure. And I thought every MUFC made a point. He said a new structure will improve club communication, which is so important. The Glazers never communicated with Arnold. The Glazers never visited the club. The Glazers never spoke to people at the club. Recruitment will improve because we've got new structure coming in. We've got Omar Barada, who will stop us spending 80 million on Anthony and Maguire. We'll have Dan Ashworth eventually come in that will put in long-term strategies in place and recruitment people in place to make sure that as soon as we've got a problem or we need a new left back, right, this is the guy who can get £12 million. We'll have obviously Jason Wilcox that's done the academy, and assumably we're going to bring in someone else in recruitment. So recruitment should improve. With Omar Barada, negotiations should be better. I think what Man United are doing with Dan Ashworth is Newcastle asking for £20 million, and Man United are just going to say, look, but wait. Man United know that Dan Ashworth's going to be an example of the INEOS regime. If other teams see that we literally waited a year to get Dan Ashworth in because we were being forced out of a dodgy price by Newcastle, that will send a message that, INEOS at Man United, we can't mug them off. We can't, put Man United tax on our players. Hoyland was £50 million. Man United went in. Lee Congerton sold us Maguire. He thought, well, I can put an extra 20 million on Hoyland's price tag because Man United are in. Hoyland would have gone to Man City for 50 million. He went to United for 70 million. But he said, the only other thing about the emphasis on coaching and a head coach, not manager, is it will improve a lot of things, but will it improve United out of possession and the horrors we've seen this season? We've got a lot of problems at the club with communication, those at the club, the Glazers and everything as well. But the one thing that INEOS need to change, I think, on the pitch, that possession structure. Is that something Ten Hag will change if he gets the right recruitment, right players in? Will Ten Hag be told to play a different way, or is that Ten Hag's goal to play that kind of football? Because in the post-match interviews, he defends playing that kind of football and conceding a lot of shots, which is worrying. But also, is he just very positive and defensive in his post-match interviews because he can't say anything bad about the player? He'll get a reaction as well. 3-1-6 formation will never work. Who we buy, it's a dumb formation. We sort of do it weirdly in game, but we don't set up with a 3-1-6. Sometimes we do. Someone said Murtough is the best player in the world. Clearly trolling there as well. And Alex Ferguson endorsing Moyes was what started the free fall of United. To be honest, I think it's just the Glazers and the fact that Alex Ferguson was so good, he overperformed so many years that we knew the Glazers were bad, but maybe we didn't know the extent of how badly the Glazers neglected the club until Moyes came in and got Fellaini as his only signing. I don't think you can blame Moyes for the downfall of United. I think the downfall of United is on the Glazers and them employing Woodward and them employing idiots to do this job and that job. Whereas if they'd employed proper people in the first place, they could have spent 400 million less and could have three Premier League titles and 2 Champions Leagues in the last 10 years. Had we got our recruitment right, we could have spent less and had we brought the right people in. But unfortunately, we're not going to do that. Now, that's not me saying that we would have won the Champions League and Premier League, but I guarantee you if INEOS had brought the right people in, we'd be in a much better position as well. Someone said they still admire Ragnick's 4-2-2 formation. It's similar to what Nagelsmann would do if he came to United. I mean, if Ten Hag is gone, who do you want? De Zerbi, Nagelsmann, Potter, Tuchel, Amorim? Tell me in the chat, who would you want? David said, we were winning the game when Johnny Evans came on last night. Hope you can get a full 90 of him versus Liverpool. Not convinced about Camboala, man. I think Camboala's a good player, but what is he, 19? I think we'll not fully be convinced about him in a few years. The defenders take longer to develop. I think Camboala's a good player, but Johnny Evans was special. Johnny Evans, when he came on, blocked about 3 shots in 5 minutes. He was unbelievable, his defending. So I do agree with you to that extent. We really miss Johnny Evans, and hopefully it's not a bad injury. Southampton boss Russell Martins has confirmed Jason Wilcox will leave United. He says if he ends up leaving, which is very likely at this point, he will leave with all our best wishes. He's played a huge role in changing the culture of our club, atmosphere of the club, and training ground, was just said on Jason Wilcox, which I will get into later. But I do think every day MUFC summed up this Laurie Whitwell interview very well, speaking about Ten Hag accepting more of a head coach role, but staying at United and having less power and what that would bring. But again, that won't fix the problems out of possession. As well, it was said that several European clubs see Ten Hag's first season as an overachievement given his circumstances, and this season as underwhelming, leading to an overall solid tenure so far. Figures at Ajax wish for his return, but Ten Hag is not interested as well. And it was confirmed by Laurie Whitwell that there are figures interested in Ten Hag. And this is what I'm going to say to you, because I know a lot of you guys are Ten Hag out, but let's say Amorim goes Liverpool, De Zerbi goes Barcelona, and Nagelsmann goes Bayern. Who's left on the market? Thomas Tuchel, Graham Potter looking like the best options. Do you really want to sack Ten Hag when we could back him for 1 more year and see what he does with 3 years of backing with a solid board and solid recruitment? Or would you really want to start again with someone like Thomas Tuchel coming in, someone like Graham Potter coming in? I know it's been an underwhelming season, but if we sat Ten Hag, there'll still be decent clubs in for Ten Hag like Ajax. You've got to remember that. There'll still be decent clubs in for Ten Hag like Ajax because he is a good manager. And I think, if we do set Ten Hag, it's got to be because they know that Nagelsmann will come or Aaron will come. I don't want to be in a position where they sat Ten Hag and then it's like, oh, actually, should we just bring Graham Potter in? But I think INEOS will be organised. I think INEOS will be planned as well. It was said that INEOS would advocate for a young yet established British coach to join the backroom staff, but Ten Hag believes nationalities are irrelevant, which I like from Ten Hag. The one thing that worries me about INEOS, I see a lot of people that are sort of upset with INEOS after this report that they're going to keep Ten Hag, which I think is a bit silly and a bit of an overreaction. But the one thing that worries me about INEOS is their clear love and preference for the British, to the point where INEOS want to sign domestic talent. Now, domestic talent's not necessarily British, but players that sort of grew up playing in Britain, a bit like Elise, who technically is British but can play for France. I think the British obsession at United is a bit of a problem. I remember we were so obsessed with Man United ex-pros and giving Man United ex-pros jobs even if they're not qualified. The British obsession of Man United is silly, and I think Ten Hag's spot on when he says, well, do we need a British coach? The nationality of the coach is irrelevant, and I think Ten Hag is pretty spot on when he says that, to be honest, as well. Someone said Delo's not defended. Delo had a poor game yesterday, but Delo's been very good this season. He just looked knackered. I think it's a one-off as well. Someone said Eric Ten Hag's part of the failed structure. Well, not really. Like, Eric Ten Hag could be doing better, and Eric Ten Hag's not, tactically has not been great. But Eric Ten Hag has these players around him, this squad to work with in a very difficult environment. That, for me, yes, Eric Ten Hag structurally has set us out really bad out of possession, and we do concede many shots, and that is Ten Hag's fault. But I don't think you can blame recruitment or anything like that on Ten Hag, which a lot of people do, because if we had someone proper in, they wouldn't have allowed us to spend 85 million on Anthony. They would have said 40 million, or we're going for another option. We wouldn't have probably spent 80 million on Maguire if we had proper recruitment in. So I don't think that is Ten Hag's fault at all. I'm falling asleep again. I don't know what it is, but whenever I go live, I get a little bit sleepy. We need a you left back. I said doggy. We will talk about that later on as well. If Nagelsmann comes to the club, he'll be the EPL's Diego Simeone. Well, Nagelsmann's a lot more attacking minded than Diego Simeone. I saw people saying they'd want Diego Simeone at United, but I think if you don't like Ten Hag ball, Diego Simeone ball is very boring. It probably suit the crop of players. We have the sort of defensive box defending, counter-attacking players, but Diego Simeone's football is sort of boring. I do want to say I thought Anthony had a good game, and I was impressed by Anthony as well. I do want to get into a couple other stories as well, but I do think this whole British coach obsession is weird. I'm glad that Eric Ten Hag has basically said to INEOS, just bring in a coach who doesn't need to be British. I do think the British obsession at United is definitely weird. I do think INEOS have a bit of a British obsession. Like, I generally think that Branthwaite is great, and Branthwaite will be a great signing, and Elise is great. But it does seem to feel like we have this obsession with British players. Someone said Manchester United should go for Matheus Cunha because he can do everything. Højlund can't, and he can also play in midfield. He could play with Højlund, and he can do everything Højlund can't. He's very good technically. His work rate isn't an issue, and that's the kind of guy that you'd want as an alternative 9. I think United should go all up for Cunha. Cunha is definitely an option. I think Xerxes, Sesko are options. Cunha are good options. I think there are some decent options out there. What I like about Xerxes is he can play with Højlund as well. But yeah, John Murtough is leaving. It's obvious once new guys are in. Yeah, I mean, Richard Arnold's already left, and John Murtough will leave once new guys are in. It's pretty obvious as well. Even with all the players fit, the system is flawed. Oh, Ten Hag's system is flawed, but even Ange Postecoglou's system has flaws. You need everything right for the system to not have flaws. Even if we got recruitment right, there would still be some kind of flaws, but that's normal in football. We just need the flaws to be minimal and the players to be of quality to execute that. So, like, if we are conceding a lot of shots, we have the players capable of scoring 3-4 goals a game. Alice, you eat before you come on air. It raises insulin levels, which makes you feel tired. I did have a chocolate bar. Maybe that's why. I feel like today, at the moment, I'm just really tired. I feel like I start doing a live stream, I'm good for 10 minutes, and then I start falling asleep a little bit in my live streams, and then I start waffling. Maybe it's because I had a chocolate bar like 10 minutes before I went live. Maybe that's messed with me a little bit there as well. I've got the cold water to wake me up as well. I would forgive INEOS because it seems like we are expecting the British golden generation. I can see that from Kenya. Maybe INEOS wants to capitalise on this big England's generation. Maybe. I think we do have a British obsession at United, but I do like the approach of young British talent because there's so much of it and the pool's so good. But we can't be signing players because of their nationality. We obviously have to sign certain players that are British, homegrown. We need to be signing players that we're like, you're good. We need to be signing players that are young, that some are Premier League proven, that we believe we can develop into superstars. Wayne Rooney was British, came from Everton. John Stone was British, came from Everton. Branthwaite's British, he comes from Everton. I have no issue with us going for Branthwaite, but it's players like Drewsbury Hall where I think the obsession would be a bit weird. I think Drewsbury Hall's a good player, but he's not like the key position we need. Branthwaite and Elise, I don't mind us going for them as domestic talents, but I also want to see us going for Tolibo. I also want to see us going for maybe a young left back that's not super known, that's going to give Luke Shaw some real. I want to see us look at more of a Xerxes and a Sesko rather than going for maybe an Evan Ferguson and overpaying for him because he's not been good for Brighton this season as much as I rate him. I want to see United, of course, go for some of the great domestic talent. There's some brilliant English talent out there, but I don't want it to be a thing where we will focus on someone because they're British, because I think there is a weird British obsession at United. Now, obviously, Laurie Whitwell is saying that it looks like INEOS plan to keep Erik ten Hag and that Erik ten Hag's future is safe and he will take, a head coach role and all of that. But obviously, no decision's been made. But other reports claim that this is nonsense PR and that INEOS have already decided to part ways with ten Hag. And I think the whole ten Hag situation and what's going on is very much a guessing game. I don't think anyone knows the future of ten Hag and if it's safe or not. I generally believe INEOS know what they're going to do. INEOS have had conversations with Murtough. They have an idea of what they're going to do. They're either going to see it one way, performances haven't been good enough, style of football hasn't been good enough, so many things are awful, so many things are off. They're going to sack ten Hag because they've maybe found a replacement that they think's better. I think if they sack ten Hag, it's because they know they'll get Amarin in or De Zerbi in, which, Liverpool and Barcelona and Bayern are also looking at managers, and I don't think they'd sack ten Hag unless they were competent. They knew who the replacement would be, and it would be someone good enough. Because you don't want to sack ten Hag. All the good managers taken by the other club, you end up with Potter, who isn't a bad manager, but for me, I wouldn't sack ten Hag just to replace him with Graham Potter. If they sacked ten Hag replaced him with Jurgen Klopp, I'm not going to complain. I think INEOS will look at the price of sacking ten Hag, who's available, and the wider issues at the club, and decide whether they're going to sack ten Hag or not, and probably have an idea of what they're going to do with Omar Barada. But I don't think the media know that. Laurie Whitwell is one of the most informed people in the media. Fabrizio Romano and David Ornstein have all suggested that INEOS haven't made a decision to sack ten Hag, whereas everyone else in the media is making up that INEOS have made a decision to sack ten Hag and that this is BS. I mean, I saw other journalists, saying that Laurie Whitwell is chatting crap and that they've already decided to sack ten Hag, and it was this journalist that's a tier 3 source that told us we're getting Qatar. So I would sort of ignore those journalists that because I think Laurie Whitwell is quite credible and he's just reporting what he knows. I don't think a decision's been made. I don't think anyone knows if ten Hag is staying or going. But I wouldn't be surprised if ten Hag stayed if he accepted the role of being head coach and not manager. If ten Hag's responsibilities get lower and he just focuses on the football side of things and the right structures and processes of the recruitment for ten Hag, as said by INEOS, he might accept that. And I think INEOS, there's a strong possibility they keep ten Hag because they know there's so many issues going on at the club. They know there's so many problems, players need to go, there's so many structural issues that need change first. I wouldn't be surprised if INEOS kept ten Hag for we're going to get in the players to play this style of football. Ten Hag's now head coach. That means it come December, if we need to sack ten Hag, at least we've brought players in that will suit the next manager that will come in and replace ten Hag. I think there's multiple ways that you can look at it and the future of ten Hag as well. And I think, there's some great British talents, but we definitely need to not obsess over British and not obsess over Premier League proven. Like Nico Williams is just as good as Elise, in my opinion, but Elise obviously is Premier League proven, but Nico Williams can stay fit and play on both wings. What's going on with Velasquez? He's out to the end of the season because his surgery went wrong as well. Garnacho, Ahmed, Camboala, kids from abroad, but very, very true Reds. Exactly. I think a player's nationality does not matter. Obviously, you need a certain amount of English players because of rules, but I think the nationality doesn't matter as well. Alice, would you do a video analysis on Bowen or Paquetá? Potentially for the second channel. Voice crack. I might give that a thought. People saying we should sell Bruno Fernandes. Again, I disagree. I get a lot of stick for this. A lot of you just disagree with me on that, but it seems to be a thing that basically 60% of the fan base right now, and I've had people telling me they're unsubscribing because they don't agree with me, which I think is silly. But there's about 60% of the fan base now that want Bruno and Rashford sold. And look, Rashford wasn't great, and Rashford's not been good this season, and Bruno's not been near his best. But you have to look at Man United in a realistic position. Is selling Bruno and Rashford this summer actually going to make us any better next season? Probably not. Let's be honest, probably not. We were 2-0 down to Chelsea about Rashford playing, and we were playing crap. We've had games where Bruno hasn't played, we've been crap. We've had games where Rashford hasn't played, we've been crap. Is selling Rashford and Bruno really going to change anything next season? I don't think it will. Okay, because last season, when we were really good and finished third and won a trophy, our 5 best players were Bruno, Rashford, Luke Shaw, Casemiro, Martinez. 5 players that we know could deliver under Ten Hag. Was McTominay good last season? No. Has he been all right this season? Yes. But is he good enough to start? No. Or worse when McTominay starts. Casemiro's not been good enough this season. And he's old, unlike Bruno and Rashford. So we should maybe move on Casemiro because he's older. You know, as Maguire's had 2 good seasons in 5 years at United, should we move him on? Lindelof maybe had 1 good season in 6 years at United, should we move him on? Rashford, 3 out of our last 5 seasons has been player of the season shout. Bruno, 3 of our last 5 seasons has been player of the season shout. So while Bruno and Rashford haven't been good enough this season, and I guess if PSG come in with over 100 million for Rashford, then we have another discussion about actually, well, what could we do for the money for Rashford? That would be a little bit different. But realistically, we can't sell everyone. Realistically, let's say we can only sell 8 players. I mean, let's say only 8 players leave, first team players. Well, that's Donny and Martial because they're going to be absolutely useless next season. That's the first 2 out. Amrabat will leave because Ten Hag clearly doesn't rate him. Eriksen will again have no use next season. Rashford and Bruno will have more use than Eriksen next season. Eriksen has got the legs. That's 4. Lindelof can go. He's been injured this season. Our other centre backs are better. That's 5. McTominay's not good enough to start. I guess he can have an impact off the bench, but no, that's McTominay 6. All right. Well, Jadon Sancho's got to go because he refused to play. That's 7. That's 7 players already gone for me. And let's say we can only sell 8, that would offer less than Bruno and Rashford next season because you can't sell every single player. And like other players that we might sell, it could be Casemiro. He's aging, offer from Saudi, McTominay, Casemiro, McTominay, Eriksen, Amrabat. That's 4 in midfield. Donny's 5 in midfield. Lindelof's 1 in defence. Maguire's 2 in defence. Maybe Malacia 3 in defence. So I see a lot of people say we must get rid of Rashford and Bruno. But if we sell Rashford and Bruno this summer, I don't think we get better next season just because we've sold Rashford and Bruno. Maybe in the long term we'll have to look to sell on Rashford and Bruno if form doesn't pick up. Maybe in a year's time we'll be saying, look, Rashford and Bruno have had a poor season again this season. Those positions are important. We need to upgrade on them. But this summer, you need to get the players that aren't good enough at all for United, even when in form. Like Rashford in form is good enough for United. Bruno in form is good enough for United. And I think Bruno is probably our best player on his day. You need to get rid of the players that, when in form, aren't good enough for United. Eriksen doesn't have the legs anymore. I don't think Casemiro has the legs anymore. McTominay can make an impact off the bench. He's not good enough to start. Donny's not good enough. Martial's not good enough. Anthony's just not good enough, but he's been good our last 2 games, which I'm happy about. Sancho isn't good enough. You need to get the players that aren't good enough now out and then replace them with players that are good enough. And if, look, we get recruitment right, let's say, we get rid of Sancho and Anthony. Let's say we get rid of Sancho and we bring in Elise, and Elise and Garnacho are starting wingers, Rashford's on the bench, okay? And if Rashford's poor next season, you sell him. But I'd rather have Rashford coming off the bench than, like, who else than Anthony come off the bench, or Sancho doesn't want to be that comes off the bench. So I know a lot of people want Rashford and want Bruno gone this summer, but I don't think it solves many issues. I really don't. And people give me stick for that. People disagree with me in that. And I don't think Rashford's been good enough this season. I don't think Bruno's been great this season. But if Rashford and Bruno weren't playing right now, it would be Eriksen and probably Anthony, who had a good game. And I think Anthony probably deserves to start versus Liverpool. Or maybe Mount out wide. And I don't like playing players out of position. We've got so many bad players that I think Bruno and Rashford, there's probably 15 players at Man United that would need to be offloaded before Bruno and Rashford. And I think you need to get those 15 players out. Maybe if you get 100+ million for Rashford, you look at it and you think, could we cash in on him? Because he's been great 3 seasons, but he's had 2 crap seasons as well. But look, loads of players need to be sold. And I think INEOS can't sell everyone. I don't agree with you. Rashford had enough chances. Anthony will improve. Well, Rashford's a better player than Anthony, though. The thing is, Anthony was playing better last game. But did you see Anthony? Rashford's been poor this season, but bar Liverpool and Chelsea. If you take the Liverpool and Chelsea game out of the equation, if we go pre-March, Rashford in a poor season had still done more than Anthony this season. I think Anthony is showing elements of improvement. I think there is a good player in Anthony because I watched him at Ajax and I saw a good player in Anthony. He's young, he can develop, he can improve. But Rashford is a better player than Antony. Alice, we need Branthwaite, De Jong and De Ligt. I'm not a big fan of De Ligt, to be honest. I don't think he's as good as people rate him. I'd rather get Kim and Jay if we've got a buying centre-back as well. I think there's a lot of business Man United need to do. Someone said Rashford should go for his career. A lot of you think Rashford out first, but I think there's players that need to go before Rashford as well. We need a creative midfield and young DM. Do you know what the most important thing for me is? Rebuilding the midfield. And it might be an unpopular opinion, and you guys might disagree with me, but I think rebuilding the midfield is so important. I think our midfield is gone. I think we need a top DM that's physical and tall, and a technical player to take the pressure off Maino. We need someone that is good off the ball, that can cover mass amounts of ground, that is tall, physical, and can win the ball back, which can allow Maino to play further up. But we also need someone else that can help and build up. In an ideal world, you sign Prime Tchouaméni and Prime Frankie de Jong. Bosh. But Man United need to find that physical six profile and also a technical kind of player. We need two midfielders at least. Look at Liverpool. Look at Liverpool last season. They lost Henderson, they lost Fabinho, they lost Oxlade-Chamberlain, they lost Keita, and they lost someone else that can play in midfield, Milner. Liverpool lost 5 midfielders last summer. We're going to lose 4. Amrabat, Eriksen, Casemiro, McTominay. We should lose those 4 because those 4 aren't good enough for the long-term project. Liverpool then replaced the 5 midfielders they sold with Endo, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, McAllister. They brought in 4 younger, fresher midfielders. And look at Liverpool now compared to last season. All Liverpool did in the transfer window was rebuild their midfield. And it might be an unpopular opinion, but United need to do the same. Mason Mount can stay, Bruno can stay, Maino can stay. The rest of the midfield needs to be rebuilt. I don't think we've got the funds for João Neves, but if you can get, Amadou Onana or Matt Sweefer in the 6 and João Neves in more advanced, great. But I think you need to sell Casemiro, get 30 million from Saudi, sell McTominay and get 30, 40 million. I think this is our last chance to cash on McTominay. Let Eriksen go, let Amrabat go, let Donny go, and you go out there and go, you know what? We found this 22 million pound midfielder in the French league. He's a gem. I don't know who I'm talking about. Maxim Kakare, for example. He's technical. That's good competition for Maino. Oh, look. Everton have got relegated. Amadou Onana's available on the cheap. Maybe we go for him. Oh, we can't get Amadou Onana. We've been outpriced. Matt Sweefer's available. Hjulmann's available. Fofana of Monaco, 25 million. Thuram of Nice is a player we've been linked to. I think you look at Liverpool, how they've gone up levels this season compared to last season. They lost 5 midfielders, they brought 4 in. Yes, we need centre-backs. Yes, we need fullback. Yes, we need another striker to help Højlund. And yes, we need another winger. But I generally believe sorting out that midfield is so important. I think personally, in my opinion, midfield is the biggest mess at United as well. I really do. I heard Cole Palmer's a lifelong United fan. I'd love Cole Palmer at Manchester United as well. I do think we're not playing Bruno in his best role. People saying it's all Ten Hag's fault. Ten Hag is at fault for some problems, and Ten Hag doesn't help himself sometimes. But I don't think there's one person. I've said this multiple times. You can't blame the problems at United on one people. There's a massive problem of environment, recruitment, culture. We know that. That's what INEOS plans to address. For the most part, most of our players haven't been good enough this season. You can't just say, oh, it's Onana's fault. I mean, it kind of is Onana's fault. We got knocked out the Champions League. But you can also look about how teams just played for our midfield in the Champions League, and Onana had so much more to do. There's I think if you look at every loss, there's 4 or 5 players that played a result in every loss, and that's a different 4 or 5 players each game. Ten Hag's played a part, recruitment's played a part. I don't think you can just point at it and say, that's the problem at Man United. We'll change him and that'll fix everything. I think there's so many things as well. We need better defensive midfielders as well. Someone said Maino's not the one. I disagree. I thought Maino had a good game. Did you see the videos of Conor Gallagher just pushing Maino and trying to foul him all game? Clearly annoyed that Maino playing better for England than he is as well. Clearly annoyed as well. You can't pick lazy players. Salah does the exact same as Rashford. What's Salah off the ball? He does the exact same as Rashford. Look, Rashford hasn't been good enough this season. I think that Antony probably deserves to start over Rashford, but Rashford is a big game player. Do you know what's mad? And look, I'm defending Rashford here, but Rashford got voted as the worst big game player in the Premier League. Not lying, that's how overhated he is. No player currently playing right now has more goals against goal contributions against the top 6 than Rashford. You can hate on Rashford all you want, but he will score against Liverpool. He will score against Arsenal. Antony had a good performance. I don't think it's right to drop Antony. And Garnacho has had a good performance. I don't think it's right to drop Garnacho. They were our 2 best players versus Chelsea. But the one thing I won't take about this is people saying that Marcus Rashford is a big game player. Yes, he walks around. Yes, he drops. Yes, he's frustrating. Yes, he's inconsistent. But people voted Rashford as someone that's bad in big games. Rashford is good in big games, and I'd understand if Ten Hag played him. I don't think he's been good enough, and I don't necessarily believe he deserves to start right now. But I thought he improved a little bit February, March compared to the beginning of the season. Got a good goal versus, was it Manchester City, or he's got a goal versus Liverpool. He's scored a few more goals, but he's good in the big games. He's good in the big games. But my criticism of Rashford is the walking around on the pitch. But Salah does that. But I think, and I'm not trying to act like I'm defending Rashford and saying he's been good enough, but I think Rashford has become a target. I generally think Rashford has become a target. Every time we lose, it's Rashford, it's Rashford, it's Rashford. But actually, yeah, Rashford weren't great, but this person wasn't great. This person wasn't great. This person wasn't great. This all needs to improve. Now, one thing that's wound me up, and I'm 35 minutes into the live stream, and I've only just got into it now, is the disrespect towards Mason Mount from Chelsea. The disrespect. Enzo Fernandez calling him a word that I won't say because this video will get demonetized. Coward, coward, coward. Who is Enzo Fernandez to be saying that to Mason Mount? Mason Mount got an awful reception at Chelsea, and he left Chelsea because they were in the mud. We were in the Champions League. They weren't in Europe. Yes, we haven't been great this season, but Mason Mount had every single reason right to leave Chelsea. I completely understand why Mason Mount would want to leave Chelsea with the mess that they were in. I really do. And Enzo Fernandez is bigging it off to Mason Mount. And I'll tell you what I replied to this. Let me get into this here. Do you know what? I think that's embarrassing. I think this is embarrassing for Enzo Fernandez. Absolutely embarrassing. Mason Mount must be glad he left Chelsea, I said. Enzo, a player that cost £105 million and won 14 out of 44 games, mouthing off to a former teammate and academy graduate with 2 Player of the Season awards for Chelsea and right when their UCL win. Mason Mount was Chelsea's Player of the Season for 2 years. He was basically the main reason they won the UCL. And the guy that's won 14 games and 44 appearances is calling out Mason Mount. You were friends, you were teammates for 6 months, and you're having a go at him. No wonder he wants to leave Chelsea. I bet the environment at Chelsea isn't very good. I tell you that. I think the attack on Mason Mount, and I think, look, a lot of United fans weren't super excited about the signing, and I get that. I don't think necessarily we needed to prioritise Mason Mount. I don't think he was quite the profile we wanted, and he's been injury and disappointing. But Mason Mount's a good player that deserves a bit more respect as well. I think, the people that give him abuse is just absolutely silly as well. Someone says we've got a bit OTT with Cole Palmer, 2 defensive deflected shots, not being unmarked doesn't take a lot. I get that to an extent, but I think he's been very good all season. Even he's created the most chances for Chelsea. He is a very good player, Cole Palmer. I want to quickly address the Dan Ashworth news and a few other stories going about. Obviously, Dan Ashworth to United, it's basically been reported it's very, very unlikely that Dan Ashworth will be here this summer, and that is because of Newcastle being difficult. And people are saying, look, INEOS are just as slow as the Glazers getting deals done. And people are saying, INEOS have shown themselves as not other Glazers, keeping Ten Hag and taking ages on Dan Ashworth. I disagree with the people saying that. Dan Ashworth, I'd like it to be done and wrapped up. I think it's important, and I think it's really important we have someone in place for this summer. But I also think equally, when you look at it, if we go and just give Newcastle what they want, 20 million for Dan Ashworth, when we go in the summer, they'll say, it's Man United, they'll cave. It's INEOS, they'll cave. If every club sees that we just wait out a year for Dan Ashworth and don't give Newcastle the 20 million ridiculous price they're demanding, teams might realise actually United will just walk away from deals. We didn't walk away from Anthony. We didn't walk away from Højlund when they asked for excessive prices, whereas Manchester City walked away from multiple deals when they asked for excessive prices. And then those clubs, a lot of the times when Man City walk away from those deals, lower the price, and Man City are like, okay, cool, we'll pay that. So I think, at the end of the day, Newcastle were taking the mick a bit with Dan Ashworth. They're really angry that they're losing Dan Ashworth to United. And while it's so important we get Dan Ashworth in the summer, if we pay 20 million, that sends a message to other clubs of, United will pay the money, especially when we've got so much business to do this transfer window. We've got so little funds. We have funds. We probably have more funds than we say, but FFP, we've got so much business to do this window. Do we want to waste 20 million on Ashworth? I wouldn't say waste, because I think Ashworth is so important that he'd be worth the 20 million. But I do think, I understand why INEOS could wait that out, but I do think we need someone in place, or at least Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada making some kind of decision. INEOS have been a bit tunnel visioned with Ashworth appointment and interim circle back if to get more reasonable. I think really we could have done something like Paul Mitchell coming in for on the temporary would have been lovely as well. But Mount scores against Chelsea in the future is every right to rather than subdue celebrations. Yeah, do you know what? Mason Mount, if we beat Chelsea FA Cup final at Wembley and Mason Mount scores the winner, he can celebrate like mad as well. Strong DM is needed massively, I agree. I feel sorry for Mount because he's been injured all season. Mount is underrated. I think Mount's a good player. I didn't necessarily think it was the signing we should make, but there's no doubt in my mind that Mount's a good player. And I thought he was good when he came on, of course, versus Brentford, but I also thought he was quite good when he came on versus Chelsea. There's a few idiots blaming Mount for the reason we lost to Chelsea. They're saying Mason Mount comes on and we can see 2 goals. It's his fault. Some people saying that on Twitter, which I think is crazy. I wanted to get in a few more things before I ended the live stream. I wanted to talk about how impressed I've been with Garnacho, because I feel like my live stream's been a bit negative lately. So I wanted to sort of finish on a positive note. Most goals and assists this season for a Premier League teenager. 13 goal contributions this season. Only the guy at Girona has more. What's he called? Name's lost me. So second best teenager in Europe's top 5 leagues for goals and assists. First teenager to score a brace in 3 different games in the same season since Michael Owen in the Premier League. Started 30 games in a row. Considering the injury crisis we had and 90% of our squad can't play more than 5 games in a row without getting injured, the fact he started 30 games in a row and he's running and giving everything and 100% in all those games speaks so highly of him. He scored the goal of the season. I think his development's improved. I think his versatility to play left and right wing's important. Rashford, you put him on the right, useless. Rashford on the left can be all right. Garnacho's been good on the left, been good on the right. His decision making's improved, his composure's improved. But I think Garnacho's work rate, if you compare the amount of running Garnacho does and sprints he does to, Rashford, it's crazy. Garnacho's work rate, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable, and you've got to praise him as well. And we need to give Bruno a rest and start Mount at 10. I think Bruno's one of those players that, he kind of needs a rest, but we're not on the UCL anymore, so we don't need to massively rest players as well. Liverpool removed their executive structure recently, and Chelsea signed that Brighton exec. We aren't doing enough, says Alex. I agree. We need to be doing more. 100%. Talking of doing more, it's basically said that Jason Wilcox is a done deal. Reliable sources are saying that although his gardening leave is a year, because Southampton aren't demanding a crazy fee like Newcastle, they believe he'll be here in the summer with Omar Barada. And then lastly, that's talk before the Liverpool game. Lastly, I wanted to talk about how to save United. Right structure, environment, and people in place making decisions. We need to hurry up. We need to get stuff done. More needs to be done, as Alex said. We need to shift off the deadwood. Really should proofread these and sell effectively. We need to make in the capitals the right signings. It's not about doing what Chelsea does and spend £1 billion on 30 signings. It might be spending £150 million on 5 signings, but those 5 signings have got to be the right signings. I'd rather sign 5 players for £200 million than 7 players for £250 million, and we spend 7 players for the sake of it. They need to be the right signings. I think we need to stop overspending. We need a long-term sight. We need to make the right signings. I think we need fullback depth. I think we need someone young. I think we need to find a gem in the fullback market. Like Liverpool found Enzo as a DM. We need to find maybe like a 12 million gem in the fullback market that could maybe be comfortable playing both sides. Or maybe we look at someone that's Prem proven like Anthony Robinson. I think it's had a good season. I think we need 2 centre-backs. Branthwaite and Todibo would be ideal. There's some great centre-backs out there that aren't Branthwaite and Todibo. Realistically, they've been the most linked. I think we need a DM. I think we need a centre-mid. I think we need to rebuild our midfield like Liverpool did in the summer. I think we need a right wing, and I think we need a striker. I think there's a lot of work to do. But I think the deadwood leaving is important as well. Our Argentine duo, Licha and Ghana, give absolutely everything to United. We need to recruit more like them. You're absolutely spot on. I couldn't agree more. But listen, people, I'm going to wrap up today's live show. I will be back tomorrow with a short news video and a live stream. If any breaking news comes out, I'll be back again tonight. If any interesting stories come out, I'll be back again tonight. If not, I'll be back tomorrow. So make sure you subscribe. Thanks everyone for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.